Welcome to Civitas LA, where we feature diverse and emerging leaders who make up this dynamic region and are creating community every day and building a better tomorrow. Each week, we hear from, learn from, and are inspired by a new generation of civic entrepreneurs who are forging a path forward in making Los Angeles a more resilient, stronger, and connected group of citizens. As we continue our three-part series looking at change and transformation and the economic developments happening in Inglewood, we're really grateful to have two entrepreneurs with us today. While the 12th largest city within LA County, with a population of 110,000, Inglewood has experienced unprecedented development. Over the last few years, we've seen the Forum, which is a landmark venue, be redeveloped into a landmark concert hall. Secondly, we've seen the new SoFi Stadium, home of the Los Angeles Rams and Los Angeles Chargers, open this year. Also, we see the potential location of the NBA LA Clippers moving to Inglewood, and of course, public investment taking place, including an extension of the Los Angeles Metro. Looking to capitalize on the economic development taking place, but also responding to the lack of outlets for local talent in the creative community to find space for expansive expression and collaboration in the Black community, Amanda Jane Thomas and Shanita Nicholas, two lawyers by training and profession, joined forces to create Sip and Sonder, with the goal to provide the startup and creative communities with access to a space where business and networks could flourish while drinking coffee. Amanda Jane and Shanita established Sip and Sonder in 2017 in downtown Inglewood, the city's first specialty coffee house. With that being said, we are delighted to have Amanda Jane Thomas and Shanita Nicholas calling us live from Sip and Sonder in downtown Inglewood this afternoon. Ladies, welcome to Civitas LA.
Thanks, Dwayne. We're excited to be here.
Well, we're so glad that you're here with us this afternoon. Thank you. So much to talk about and so much going on in Inglewood, and we're really excited getting your perspective on all that's happening from a private sector perspective is really valuable to us. So start with a few warm-up questions here. Share with our audience a little bit about your respective backgrounds. Why don't we start with you, Shanita?
Sure. Yeah, I guess a citizen of the world. My father was in the Army, so I'm a bit of an Army grad, born in Germany. Several middle schools and high schools later, I ended in New York for college. I went to Columbia University, where I studied chemical engineering. I decided to go into IT consulting at Booz Allen in DC. And like a lot of people in DC around that time, this is '09, I decided to go back to law school.
Okay.
and switch gears a bit. So I went back to Columbia, got a JD MBA, started in private equity law, and now I do startup law, and in addition to co-owning both Sip and Sonder with Amanda Jane and our nonprofit, the LA Black Investors Club.
Look forward to hearing more about that. Amanda Jane, how about you?
Yeah, so Amanda Jane Thomas. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. Grew up there, went to school there. Fast forward, college, I went up to Harvard for undergrad. I studied sociology there. Kind of foresaw a career that mixed something that I learned as a sociology major, but and also in the creative space and the production world. After graduating, I went back to New York, worked at MTV Networks for a couple of years, and then got the bug to become an attorney. And so pursued that, went back to Harvard Law School, got my JD, and began my career as an attorney in New York City, practicing corporate litigation, mainly in the securities finance space. Since then, my practice has evolved. I do much more intellectual property work now, as well as some general corporate matters. And also, co-founded Sip and Sonder and the LA Black Investors Club with Shanita.
Excellent. So how did you decide to join forces to open a coffee shop, and how did you decide on Inglewood?
Yeah, I'll take the first part of that question. So Amanda Jane and I actually were at the same law firm, our very first law firms together. And, there were a small number of Black women within the firm. And so, we did form a really close connected group there amongst us. And that's really where Amanda and I got to talk with one another and kind of talk about our passions beyond the law and what that looked like. I, really being enthusiastic about the coffee world, I kind of joke that I went to law school and became a lawyer so I could study in coffee shops. Which is not, I don't know how far from the truth that is.
An expensive way to
An
study
expensive way to be
shops.
caffeinated, exactly. And Amanda really talked to me about, some of the stuff she already mentioned, but her community engagement, creativity on that side. And we really just thought, oh, what a cool, interesting way of bringing these two passions together within a coffee house and using coffee as a conduit to all of the amazing engagement and creative work that we get to do now.
Well, I know on the wall of your shop, because I took a photo of this some time ago, you have the definition for Sonder, the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own, populated with their own ambitions, friends, routines, worries, and inherited craziness. So how did you come up with the name Sip and Sonder? And I know you bill your shop as more than just an ordinary coffee shop. So tell us about the concept and what you're hoping to achieve when you opened the shop.
Sip and Sonder is exactly that. It's much more than a coffee house. We are the first specialty coffee house in Inglewood, but it's really a space, and the idea of placemaking was really important to us in the creation of Sip and Sonder. And that's the idea of really what does it mean to have public, open, accessible spaces in communities. And it's proven that those types of spaces really contribute to the community's wellness, their joy, their happiness, their health, their, fill in the blank. So for us, it was like, we wanted this space that, as Shanita mentioned, using coffee as a conduit to so much more. Right now we are a coffee house. We also have become a coffee roaster, so we're roasting our own coffee. We have a creative studio on site as well, multi-purpose event space. So because of all of those different things, right? It really is that space where coffee, community, culture, all of them connect and collide here at Sip and Sonder. So, to the name, it was like, okay, we have this space that embodies really connecting, right? And being your truest authentic self and connecting with others. And thinking through, what are we going to, name this space? Mentioned, there's this word Sonder. That let's take a look at that, and looking up the definition of Sonder, and it was just immediately like, this has to be part of the name of Sip and Sonder. It really captures something that I think is at the essence of our business, which is, we're also different and we have our own lives and craziness, but that realization in and of itself is the beginning point of connecting. Right. So we may come from different backgrounds or, different paths, but I can empathize and understand what it means to have a busy routine or a crazy life or, ups, downs. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. Have a space where once you have that connection, great things happen. So Sonder was part of the name immediately. And then we kind of sat on, we were like, it has to be something. And at first, for a while, it was Sit and Sonder. And we were like, we're going to sit on it. I guess pun intended, no pun intended. And then it was that eureka where we like sip, because coffee is, again, that conduit. We're sipping coffee here. Sip and Sonder.
Yeah, excellent. So where would you say your geographic base comes from? What's your customer base for the shop so far?
Yeah, it's really, grown over the year and a half that we have been within this space. Our deepest connections are here within the Inglewood community. That's our foundation and the community that we came to grow with and we evolve, and we've been able to do just that. And so, home base is Inglewood, and we've really, seen other people across LA connect with what we're doing here and start really connecting with the community in broader levels. Part of that is all the change and the new things within Inglewood, bringing broader attention generally to the city, but also our outreach as well, and our connections to other Black coffee shops across LA, and how much those connections and relationships have meant to us since there was a bit of a boom around the time that we, shortly after we opened, and having those connecting points. But we are also very much engaged virtually as well. And so we see connections on our social media. Being from New York, we have quite a few New York touch points that we keep in contact with and that we see follow us from a creative stance and other places around the country and even around the world through that virtual engagement. And in the last few months, we started roasting our coffee in-house for e-commerce. And it's been so amazing. I think every time we get a new order in from a different state, a different jurisdiction, it's been so cool to say, oh, wow, there's this person in Colorado who, every couple of weeks we get an order from. And so we've seen that expanding, and we're excited to continue that growth. But, I always like to, recognize where home is, and home is right here in Inglewood.
Sure. Coffee shops are notorious community hubs. So how are you going about building community, particularly in a town which may not have a vibrant coffee culture? You're the first such coffee shop like yours in downtown Inglewood. So how has that been in terms of creating community locally?
Yeah. The way that our approach that we took with kind of, entering Inglewood and building that very community that you're talking about, we got on Market Street in 2017, but didn't open our doors officially until last year, April 2019, right? And in that period, which was full of a huge construction project and lots of things happening, kind of logistically that made it take that long, but it was also a time for us to really have our ears to the ground in a very purposeful way and integrate ourselves into the community and really meet people, listen, learn, create connections with other community organizations and folks that, whether they've been here their entire lives or they're, moved from another city or grew up here and left and are back or whatever that looks like. But really, what are the needs of the community? What does the community want to see? Our tagline is for the community, for the culture. And we can't say that unless our ears are actually to the community and actually engaging and before doing and executing, listening, like what are those needs, right? And one of the things that we found in Inglewood is that there's so much amazing talent and energy and just it's such an almost contagious energy and an excitement here, and there's a desire for a lot of the things that then we actually ended up doing and have been doing that engages with the community. A lot of our programming, our events, the things that we do outside of just brewing coffee, very much in a response to the community that would say, hey, have you guys ever thought about doing this? Or we really, need XYZ. And it really looks at, lots of different ways, which is awesome. It's, on the creative side, we're having galleries or jazz nights, or there's so much creativity in Inglewood. Also through our nonprofit, the LA Black Investors Club, which is really much more steeped in how are we supporting this ecosystem of Black and Brown entrepreneurs that lack access to networks, resources, capital, all of the above. And so a lot of the programming through LABIC, that's the LA Black Investors Club, has also happened here, right? So it's this entrepreneurial and creative hub where, there could be something for everyone, right? You can come here and see a film screening or attend a gallery, but you could also come to a gentrification town hall or a business pitch competition or a fireside chat with a venture capitalist of XYZ. So it really is, again, how are we tapping into all of those diverse and dynamic needs and facets of the community?
Well, I think you did jump ahead of me a little bit there, because I read a piece where you talked about mindfully curated coffee and innovative programs and partnerships as key to really making Sip and Sonder the premier destination for creatives and entrepreneurs and freelancers. So I was going to ask you to really share some of the initiatives that you've put in place, obviously recognizing that these were all put in place prior to COVID. But I'm interested to hear about some of these initiatives, if you can elaborate.
Yeah, I'll take on a couple of things that Amanda just talked about. Kind of first would be LA Black Investors Club, that was a precursor to Sip and Sonder, and where we host a lot of the events within the space now. And so the quarterly business pitch competitions, as an example, it has been such an amazing journey for the companies that are involved, but for us as well, and connecting to venture capitalists. We always have a panel of judges for those competitions from the VC world, Black VCs around Los Angeles, really looking at critiquing and judging local businesses from tech to consumer products. And that's been a great journey within the space. Going into some of the artistic and creative side. So we started on a series called On View at Sip and Sonder. This was right before COVID. So these are all caveats of COVID, where, we opened up a forum for local artists to come in and show us their artwork, and each month switching out a different local artist on our wall. We have a lot of walls in here, very tall ceilings, where we can actually showcase their work, and we were able to do that in February pre-COVID. In addition to our cinema club, so we every month would showcase a film led by one of our baristas here who really focused within that world, showing local films or films from local individuals as well. And so, a lot of that programming is focused on within the local community here. Our jazz nights, we have a house band, The Catalyst, a local Inglewood band as well. And so really looking across these different platforms and really engaging, something, I'll touch on something Amanda said before as well, asking the community, what do you want to see? And that has really been what has spurred the engagement that we've had and the activations that we've had in the space.
That's wonderful. I'm curious. You said, you did a lot of listening as you decided to open up the shop. What were you hearing from the residents of Inglewood? What was lacking? What do they want from you all as you were coming into that community?
One of the things that was something that kind of came up a lot was really, a lot of folks in the community being, I think there was a little bit of apprehension about, okay, who we were, because we're not native. We're not from Inglewood or California. So, and with that, coupled with that, a lot of, everyone knew the stadium is coming, and the change that is, the buzz and what gentrification may look like and what that'll, do. And I think that with a lot of that, even seeing a coffee shop, folks say, oh, coffee shops are signs of the neighborhood changing. Right. And so a lot of, things you're hearing is, what does this mean? Who is Sip and Sonder? First of all, who are you guys? What are you about? And what are you trying to do? Why are you here? Right. And is this going to help me, hurt me? Should I be cautious? Should I open you with welcome arms? Where do I stand? Right. And all completely valid. Right. So, really engaging in that discourse with members of the community and saying, actually, for that very reason, we've seen it in cities across the country where there's hurried gentrification and there's displacement and there's, all of the above. And that's a whole, separate topic. But knowing that, it's, what does it mean to have a space that amidst whatever changes happen and whatever, that looks like demographically or otherwise, what does it mean to have a space where consistently there is excellent product and excellent quality right in your own community, and where you are consistently not just welcome, but this is a space for you.
Right.
Despite all that change. And I think that was the narrative where, specifically in response to a lot of those, concerns and, frank conversations, which are great, people very honest, which is exactly what, we kind of like to think of ourselves as kind of keep it straight kind of, folks. And that was so welcome, because I think that it aligned very squarely with exactly why having Sip and Sonder, particularly now, when we got on the block and continue to maintain ourselves here, why it's so important, as a Black woman-owned business, and a space that is, unapologetically doing a lot of the things that we're doing for the community. And that being something that we were able to have lots of conversations with the community about. We earlier on in 2018 hosted a gentrification town hall here, where we brought in different folks from different silos. So from the real estate development, from the small business owners, from the longtime residents, from, each of those, to really have, and it was a very, it was full of energy, that discussion. It was also very real, and having even a forum to do that right in Market Street, super important.
How do you think you were perceived as Black female entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of, um, there's an importance of representation. And I think what I saw within families, especially, is a thankfulness for that representation within the community. And it's something that we certainly don't take for granted and understand as well, of what it means to see a reflection of yourself when you walk into a space. We sit within a community that is, Black and brown, and we acknowledge that and we reflect that. If we were, I think if the comparison were if we were to white men that opened up the shop as an example, I think there would be a bit of, um, there's certain things that we grew up within, and there are communities like Inglewood that we come from. And so the concerns that we have or would have had in our own communities, we were able to proactively address. And I don't believe individuals not with that background or understanding, and level of empathy would be able to have that connection.
You mentioned how you established only a few years ago, 2017, but just opened the shop last year in 2019. How have you had to adjust during COVID? I saw Los Angeles Magazine had an article recently entitled, "How Quickly Will LA's Booming Coffee Culture Bounce Back?" So how have you all adjusted during this COVID period, and how are you working to create and maintain and build community that you've been so purposeful about?
Yeah, I mean, I recall, in March when we first just had to decide to furlough our employees, and we did shut down, fully for about a month, and we had just gotten 80 pounds of coffee, and we were staring at and thinking, okay, well, this is, at that time we were still vending from, Red Bay in Oakland. And we had a real conversation with ourselves of, okay, we want to provide this product, the product that we have been serving to the community that has gotten used to being able to get it within their community, with other members. And so, we kind of called up, coordinated on bagging the coffee, thinking through what that process looked like, and had a new, line of our business within 3 days, and kind of sped up our innovation because we always were going to get into roasting, and we had already been in contact with the roaster that we wanted, and we didn't see that until Q4 this year or Q1 2021. And it really was that moment of, we may have to rethink of what that business plan, what that timeline is. And so we sped up our process there, started roasting at the early part of the summer, and got our own roaster in-house in August, and are doing full, roasting production, and selling that across the country at the moment. And so, one very tangible change that we made to our business was that innovative speed up.
Okay.
I'll say, where COVID was a catalyst to that. But we've had to kind of think quick on our toes and be able to pivot in that way, in response to say, really stay sustainable. Thinking through how we're engaging with our team members. So we, had to furlough them, initially, and did that early on so that they could get through unemployment. We could walk them through that, and so that we could really build out stronger, continue to be strong, and even stronger as we move through this time, which is where we sit now. So our limited hours currently, but we're able to be open 7 days a week, and able to re-engage and re-employ, our employees, which has been amazing. They're really our team members, and so a lot of those, aspects have, stemmed from a lot of conversations between Amanda and I. A lot of projections out, plenty of Excel sheets later to get there, with that goal of, okay, let's sustain, and within that idea of sustaining, let's set ourselves up to grow. Let's set ourselves up to be really great.
That's excellent. Speak a little bit more, please, about the nonprofit arm that you established. Where was that? When was that established, and what's the purpose behind the nonprofit? What are some of its goals and objectives?
Sure. So the LA Black Investors Club, is our 501c nonprofit. that we founded. The beginnings of the LA Black Investors Club actually started, not, name aside, but what the LA Black Investors Club, does now. The beginnings of that started in New York. Meetups between, whether young professionals in business or whatever kind of silo, around entrepreneurial endeavors, I'll say. And, Shanita moved out to Los Angeles. I moved out to Los Angeles. And we started doing our LA Black Investors. We brought that organization with us. And that became the LA Black Investors Club. And a lot of that programming was happening in Inglewood. And what our mission is really to foster the development of entrepreneurial ventures. Ultimately, that leads to that individual and wealth creation and that's, individual and collective, right? You're talking about communities. And it's so important, and what the LA Black Investors Club is really trying to target through our various programming is that there's a lack of access that exists among Black and Brown communities. And that's access to networks, it's access to mentors, it's access to resources, it's access to certain knowledge, it's access to capital, financing, right? And it's not for lack of all types of amazing and awesome that exists. Mm-hmm. That is a proven fact. We yell it from the tabletops, which is a whole other topic to talk about. But there's a gap. So how are we? And this is we LABIC addressing and trying to address that gap. And our take is through the various programming that we have. One of our biggest programs that I'll kind of just focus on briefly is our Black Business Pitch competition. We started that in 2017 here in Los Angeles. And in that competition, we have about 10 businesses, average, that will pitch their businesses, their startups, to a panel of judges. And these judges are Black VCs from the LA ecosystem. And and then there's a winner, and first or second, third place winner. And the process itself also involves, we do these, Shanita and I, as well as our other board member, lead these learning sessions where we are providing, tangible lessons that entrepreneurs need. Like, how are you bootstrapping? How are you addressing your financials? How are you, thinking about your entity formation? What are those on the IP side, trademark or other, IP issues you need to be thinking about? Really, and this is all in advance of those competitions. So that way a business can compete, and maybe they don't win that top prize. But our goal is, in going through this cycle, you've left with tangible things that actually you can implement for yourself and for your business, as well as now those networks that you've met, because you have the opportunity to pitch your business before this VC that's actually in their day job investing real capital in real businesses and the knowledge they have to share. And that's one example of the programming that we do. But that's really the LA Black Investors Club sweet spot, is how are we leveraging these disconnected pieces and bringing them together.
And in the same time, creating community, which is also very important. Tell me, how do we find out more about the club? Is there a website that we can post in our show notes for our audience?
Yeah, so our website is lablackinvestorsclub.org.
Okay.
And all across our socials, it's at LA Black Investors Club.
Excellent. Let's speak a little bit about Inglewood. As this is a three-part series, we've talking about the changes going on in Inglewood. I'm just curious to get your sense of all that is happening around you in downtown Inglewood and Inglewood overall, and how do you feel about that? How did that lead you to deciding to set up shop in downtown Inglewood?
Yeah, I love this question because it was, I think in the 2020 vision, it seems like we that it was a huge role in deciding on Inglewood, but it honestly wasn't. We built Sip and Sonder for the community that existed when we built it, that exists now. I think as we move into a lot of the really cool and interesting and I think will be great development that's happening, that will bring more attention and more people, physical people walking around, which is great for business. But I love that we had those 3 years prior to the opening of, let's say, the stadium, to really develop this space and create ownership within this space and spaces around us of individuals who are from the community and or reflect the identity and values of the community. And so, I think with that foundation, and that really strong understanding of what the community is and how the community has come together to already create, on top of what's already been here, already a vibrant community, of utilizing that leverage with the other resources that are coming into the city to create, things that are even grander, but set in a really stern foundation.
Yeah, it's a great thing that, there's attention on Inglewood, that there's capital coming in, but not unless only if that capital makes it to more people and everyone, right? And that's the work that SIP and Sonder as being this hub, and the LA Black Investors Club is kind of more actively steeped in that work through the nonprofit. That's the challenge, right? That's the challenge of, okay, there's now this spotlight. Like, that's exactly the word that Shanita used, which is that, like, how is that leveraged to then feed back into the very community that all of this great, new development and everything sits in. And that's the question. That's the continual, it guides on the Sip and Sonder side. We're a for-profit business with our coffee house, but it guides our approach and what we do with Sip and Sonder. It also guides what we do with our nonprofit. That continual question of what is, the change that's happening and what's coming into the community. How is that? What does that look like in terms of actually making it into the hands of those that need it the most?
Well, I know there had been, conversations in the past about redevelopment on Market Street, for example, where you all are in downtown Inglewood. And, how do you make Market Street look more like, Larchmont, for example, or 3rd Street Promenade? Every community has its own rhythms. What would you like to see as small business owners in downtown Inglewood over the next number of years as a result of this public and private investment coming in?
Yeah. You know what? One thing with thinking about like a 3rd Street Promenade area in particular, I kind of push against that idea because it's a lot of bulge bracket type companies.
It's the national retailers generally.
National retailers.
I think you're using your finance terms, bulge bracket.
Yeah. But they don't always reflect what the community is, or the ownership of the community. And so, I think it's not so much of a bringing in outside national retail companies into the space, but really developing out and providing that access that Amanda talked about, to capital, to leases here or ownership, so that this street is vibrant, but I'd say vibrant with ownership that reflects and is from the community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just want to take 1 second to acknowledge the businesses that we share this street with. I won't be able to name them all, so apologies for the ones I missed. But Filthy Rags is here. We get to go shop in. The Residency Gallery, Creative House, My Two Cents, Emma Snack Shop, Jam's Creamery, The Wood. We're here. And it's just, the Salt Eaters that's coming, a new bookstore around the corner, Black women. So I think there, more of that. Like, let's really push capital and wealth into the businesses that are here, that will be coming, that reflect the community here.
Well, as new entrepreneurs or relatively new entrepreneurs to Inglewood, and all of this development that's happening, have you found yourselves involved in the civic conversation through chambers and interacting with the government there? Do you guys find yourself involved in that process at all?
We are, to a certain extent. I think that particularly in going through a lot of in 2018, in the earlier stages of going through a lot of our permitting and licensing, and where there was that kind of continual, if not constant, interfacing with different the different, agencies in the city. Like that's part and parcel though of jumping into entrepreneurship, and you learn how things go, you learn the processes you have to go with, and there's, both on the city level as well as county and state, and there's all of those, either Venn diagrams of overlap and stuff. But I think that that I think the time spent and that process, which was, about a year and a half of that, was very, I think, critical, but also necessary, because I think it's also grounding. That's part of also the space that you're, when you're coming into a community, it's literally the folks and families and folks on a non-governmental level, but as well as, the government systems and agencies that exist. And I think that that's also part of, making sure what does it mean to keep our ears to the ground. It's not just in engaging with our actual, folks that are in and out and other organizations, but it's also making sure that, okay, we are going to go to this meeting that's Wednesday at 8:30, because this is about a topic that we matters to us, or, we want to be able to know what happens so that we can talk about it to the folks that come into the coffee shop. So we do, it's a lot of that, purposefully. And again, I'm talking kind of like a pre-COVID,
Right. Everything's
COVID time
pre-COVID.
of what it means to make sure that, okay, we have to show up. And yeah, we're super tired because it's been a long day, but we need to be there at that meeting, because, and so there's a lot of that is very purposeful in making sure that, okay, and we're so close. I mean, we're a block from City Hall. The Chamber of Commerce is, right around the corner. So we're here. So it's like, we gotta be there. There's physically we're neighbors, right? As well as just the more meaningful reason of why being in that room matters.
Sure. Well, one of the things we'd like to talk about at Civitas LA is always how do we foster collaboration and partnerships, and we think it's just such a valuable thing for everyone, and we've seen more of it, particularly during this COVID time, as we see people coming together and trying to move the region forward. Can you speak to how partnerships play a role in what you're trying to achieve, and post-pandemic, what kind of partnerships are you looking for, and how can others find you and get involved in what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, partnerships is a key part of what we do here. It's involved in everything. Just today, we had a pop-up flower cart with a community business, Designs by Amber, and that was born out of conversations that we had with her and other members of the community, identifying something that was lacking on the street. So, finding a place to have really beautiful coordinated flowers. And I think in those conversations of talking with these other either businesses or entities and groups to identify collectively what is not here, what is something that we've heard the community wanting, and then working together to execute on that. And what I love so much about what we've been able to do here at Sip and Sonder is the execution aspect. When we do partner with other entities, which is most of what we do, we're so keyed in on, okay, let's get this on the calendar, let's get this done, let's take that first step. And because you get the excitement around it, you get the movement, and you bring other people in. Another partnership that we did, I'm thinking post-COVID, is with a nonprofit called Our Own. They were doing voting events, registrations, information sessions as well. And so we partnered with them for an activation on the sidewalk in front of the shop where people could register and get information. We'll be partnering with them again on Tuesday for another voting related event. And I think those are really what's so meaningful to us in those relationships. Because it really is, partnerships, it's relationships, it's building that. And that's how we get to, do really interesting, cool things that will progress, everyone involved and everyone who's tangential to that. And we're aware of what that merging of entities can do. It broadens things. It, touches so many more people. And you get that feedback loop as well as you do that, to make those sorts of things even better for everyone. So I think having those conversations, coming into the shop and speaking with us, or inviting Sip and Sonder to be in the room for those conversations, so that we can all collectively come together and think through what's lacking here. How can we make this a better place to be?
Well, certainly one of our goals for 2021, and I think we'll make it through this year. It's going to be difficult, but we'll make it through this year. One of our goals for 2021 is to take these episodes, on location, really. In an ideal world, we'd love to be at Sip and Sonder with you all and other entrepreneurs in the community talking about what's going on in the community live on set. So that's certainly a goal for ours. Post-pandemic, things get back to quote unquote normal. What does life look like for Sip and Sonder? What are your plans going forward? Do you have thoughts about expanding to other locations in the region?
So kind of in the post-pandemic world, whenever that will be, right? And even, I kind of have actually kind of shied away from thinking only about post-pandemic, because really I think, we are in the stage that we are in now, and no one knows how long this is going to be. But even if this continues for another year, say it's this time next year where there's still this holding pattern almost, still trying to think, how can we still be executing and building and doing exactly what we set out to do, and what does that look like? And I think that that's very much the way that we kind of have been approaching our forward-looking thinking, because it's like, it's out of our hands whether things will or when things will change. And I think that, that said, it really is, Sip and Sonder, through being here at on Market, we've been able to build this space that really encapsulates an experience. It's an experience for folks when they come to partake in coffee, as that conduit to so much more, everything that we've talked about. And really, it's, what does that experience look like outside of these four walls, right? Especially, we've had to think about that so much now, because we can't have folks physically in the space. So that's been the thought of what does it mean to still kind of, experience Sip and Sonder and everything that we're about and what we're doing when you're at you're at home, or, and because of that, what that's done is lended itself to, whether you're at home in Inglewood, whether you're at home in Greater Los Angeles, or whether you're at home actually across the country, right? And I think that with our roasting operations are there, really right now, our coffee can be in the hands of someone, sitting in Miami or in Ohio, or pick a city. And so focusing on what it means to continue to build in a very authentic way what the Sip and Sonder experience is, and how our brand as a coffee brand and a lifestyle brand is consumed wherever you are. Right. But yet you're in tandem with us, and that connection existing. So through, expansion of our, manufacturing abilities, we roast coffee. We love it. We love, we're a coffee house, right? So building that, and, we have two roast profiles in line of our single origin coffee beans now, and expanding that and doing exciting sourcing and building that. So that's coming, right? As well as, again, a physical manifestation of our brand is also important to us wherever you are, right? So that's a physical expansion play into what, other cities as well. So that's certainly being something on the horizon, much more so that's going to be tied to what's happening on a pandemic with the pandemic for, obvious reasons. But, there's and I mentioned Sip and Sonder really as a coffee and lifestyle brand. And so what does that latter part mean? It's all the things that we do outside of brew and make really good coffee, the best coffee in Inglewood, right? I'll say, toot toot. Outside of that, what are those other things look like,
right.
And how's that being consumed? So really, we're excited, and COVID is unfortunate, and that's one adjective, that I don't use, but I think that it's our very much our perspective, and I think it's partly just our perspective on, life is just like, there are certain things that are outside of our control, and that's always going to be life. That's our entire life stories. And we, kind of gave a gloss over of just our backgrounds, right? But that's a whole, but you still can make it, you still can persevere, you still can grow and develop. I mean, we've been able to build a roasting business in 2020, even though, not being sure if we'd be able to keep our doors open.
Right.
And, and so there's that idea of, there is that hope, and there is that, you just kind of buckle down, right? You keep going and think big, but be sure to execute, wisely, and you'll get there. And so the timing may be off, you know, that's a thing, and releasing to the timing and not, you know, but beyond that, having that flexibility and forgiveness with yourself, we're excited to kind of march on and take those. I think every kind of bad thing that could happen in terms of twists and turns has kind of happened in our growth to where we are. So I think we take the ups and downs pretty well at this point, because we're like, okay, well, could be worse. I mean, this is pretty bad, but it could be worse. And I think that's, you know, that perspective is something we're just like, okay, well, we'll take a day or two and maybe, you know, we'll brush it off and keep going. So, yeah.
Shanita, any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience today?
I want to say thank you to the Inglewood community. Mm-hmm. It's been amazing to grow with you and to continue to evolve. Just thank you to Inglewood.
You know, this has been a great conversation. As I said, you know, we've had this 3-part series. This is probably our first series outside of the city of Los Angeles, actually. So it's nice to start moving around the region. And there's so much going on in Inglewood. So we appreciate both of you for joining us this afternoon and really applaud what you've achieved thus far. We look forward to being with you on location live in 2021. Although I did come down a few Sundays ago for a really nice latte, so I do know. But before we leave, we always like to just end our sessions with a lightning round. And this is just a series of very quick questions, and just a very quick answer is required. So if you don't mind indulging us with a few lightning round questions. And you can either or both. Where are you from originally? Amanda Jane.
Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn, New York. Shanita.
Army family.
Okay. Which neighborhood do you live in currently, Amanda Jane?
Leimert Park.
Shanita.
Inglewood.
Okay. Mobility is a huge issue in Los Angeles. So how do you get around? Uber, Lyft, yellow cab, bike, bus, walk, metro, or scooter? Shanita.
I drive.
Okay. Amanda Jane.
Lyft.
Okay. Netflix, Amazon, Disney Plus, or Hulu? Amanda Jane.
Netflix.
Shanita.
I'm on Netflix too.
Okay. Favorite LA restaurant or favorite Inglewood restaurant? Amanda Jane.
Favorite LA restaurant for me is Dama District.
Okay. Shanita.
Zinke and the Venice.
Okay. Lakers or Clippers? Or since you're both New Yorkers, how about the Knicks?
I plead the fifth on this one.
Okay. Shanita, any preference?
Lakers.
Okay. Well, they're both in Inglewood. Rams or Chargers?
Oh, Rams or Chargers.
These are brutal.
Those ones.
These are brutal.
The double Inglewood ones are hard.
I know. You know, I'm gonna plead the fifth on this one too. I'm sorry, I'm sounding like such a lawyer. I'm gonna totally take my.
Okay. Favorite place in LA to take a visitor, or favorite spot in Inglewood to take a visitor?
Can I say Sip and Sonder?
Sure, absolutely.
I do.
I love the Centinela Park.
Okay. And since you are a Harvard person and since you're a Columbia person, I'm not even going to ask you Bruins or Trojans, so I'm not even going to go there. But I am going to throw one final curveball in there, since this episode's being released on December 2nd. That is after Thanksgiving and before the holiday season ensues. So I'm going to ask you, what is your favorite holiday drink at Sip and Sonder?
So we just came out with our rose cardamom latte for the fall season. And we are actively working on our holiday rollout. So that is to come.
That is to come, but it's going to be amazing.
So what's in that drink that you just mentioned, Shanita?
Yeah, it's a rose cardamom latte. So it has rose syrup and cardamom powder seeds.
Oh, wow.
It's delicious.
It's really good, yeah.
It's a Sip and Sonder special. I think you can only get it here.
So close out by telling our audience, where is here? Where do we find you?
Yeah, so we're physically located at 108 South Market in Inglewood, California. On the internet, we're at www.sipandsonder.com. That's also where our e-commerce shop is, so we can deliver coffee all around the country. And across social media, we're at Sip and Sonder.
Excellent. Ladies, this dialogue has been great, and we really appreciate all that you have done and will continue to do, not only for Inglewood, but for our community at large here in Southern California and the LA region. Hopefully we can have you on again to discuss the progress you're making, and certainly we'd like to be able to have an episode on location at SIP and Sonder next year. To our audience, thank you as always for joining us this afternoon. We hope you enjoyed this program and this series on Inglewood. Thank you again to Community Build for their sponsorship of this series and their support for the work of Civitas LA. You can learn more about Community Build at www.communitybuild.org. We hope you'll join us again next week as we look forward to another great conversation. And until we meet again, stay strong and get involved. To learn more about Civitas LA and share feedback on this program, or if you have a recommendation about future programs, please visit our website at www.civitasla.com. And we hope you'll connect with us on Facebook at Civitas LA, Instagram at Civitas_LA, and Twitter at Civitas_LA.